I'm very happy to be the wah for Kelly Lemon this morning. Today's talk is entitled Their Life Matters, to be delivered by Kelly Lemon. Kelly is an inspirational speaker, a Pacific North-based, one-armed wedding and portrait photographer, adventure seeker, and chocolate chip cookie connoisseur. Over the last 14 years in the industry, her wedding and empowerment photographs have been published in People Magazine, E! News, Style Me Pretty, The Knot Magazine, 100 Layer Cake, and Seattle Bride Magazine. Kelly has overcome the stigma that photography is only for two-armed, able-bodied people. When she was 12, she survived a near-fatal car accident that paralyzed 1/4 of her body, predominantly her right arm. She has continued to push through the impossible, overcoming many obstacles along the way in order to pursue her dream. With the most recent obstacle, due to a rare syndrome, Kelly lost the use of her only functioning arm. And so she photographed a wedding in 2018 with no functioning arms. She is thankful to have her left arm back and is continuing treatment to address the chronic nerve pain she has endured for the last 23 years. Inspired by the challenges she has confronted, Kelly wants to empower others to combat loneliness by speaking boldly in others' lives and encouraging others in their self-worth. She hopes to inspire you to remember the power of our words and how those words can potentially save a life. Kelly is married to her husband, Augustine, of 13 years, and they have a 4-year-old daughter, Juliana, and a mini golden doodle named Toby. Zooming in this morning from Seattle, please welcome Kelly Lemon.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and to see you all and to share with you this message. So I want to paint you a picture. You are on vacation in Vail, Colorado, and you're walking down the cobblestone streets and you notice this fancy restaurant. So you go inside and you see this young woman. She looks to be about 20. She smiles back at you and you notice that she's wearing a sling. So naturally, you ask, well, what happened to your arm? And she tells you the most ridiculous story. She starts telling you about how she is a professional skydiver and how she was doing a commercial for Skittles. Yep, the candy. And they were on a group dive and she was in this formation in the air and something went wrong. Her arm got twisted and that's how she injured her arm. And that's how she was in a sling. Not necessarily a story you were expecting to hear from the hostess. Spoiler, I was that young woman. You see, the first 15 years of my injury, I wore a sling. So it made my injury look really recent and casual. And at the restaurant, I sat, I don't even know, like 30 to 50 groups of people a night. So I was asked 30 to 50 times a night what happened to my arm. So you can imagine, as a 20-year-old, the story would get a little boring. And frankly, the honest and real story made people uncomfortable. So the staff and I decided we were just going to make up ridiculous stories every night. And we had some really good stories. So one story was I was a professional snowboarder in the X Games. Another story was, actually, this is maybe my favorite story. It was a story about something that was totally unrelated. So you know when someone asks you a question and you can tell they're not really listening to your answer? This was perfect. So I would just say something that would make no logical sense. So they would say, what happened to your arm? And I would reply, oh, I got my gallbladder removed. or one day it would be like, oh, food poisoning. Something that makes like no sense. But the best story was the bear story. So this family comes in from Texas and, the kind of family that would ski in their jeans and their cowboy hats. And I walk them to their table and I start telling them how I was attacked by a bear. And I was snowboarding, I was going through the trees, and I came across this young bear cub. And before I knew it, the mama bear comes in, swipes at me, injures my arm. I somehow manage to get away and I, get down the mountain. And they start freaking out. And they're like, oh my gosh, why was this not in the news? How did we not hear about this? Where on the mountain is it so we can make sure we don't go there? What do we do if we come across a bear? They just start asking all these questions. And this young boy, maybe about 9, leans over and he whispers, aren't bears hibernating? Yes. Yes, they are. So if you were to meet this young woman, you would expect, she seems confident, comfortable with who she is. And that's not necessarily a facade. But what you would not see is a young woman who learned to believe the lie at a young age that if people really knew her story, if people really knew her pain, she would never be accepted or loved. Now let's back up a little bit. So 6th grade, I was awkward, friendly, really talkative. I loved my school experience. I was in track. I was healthy. I was in all the clubs, definitely not in the popular crowd, but it was a really fun experience. And then, as we've shared before, I was in a tragic car accident summer before 7th grade. And in this accident, my life totally changed. We were driving across the country. My brother fell asleep at the wheel, going 80 miles an hour, and the car goes off the interstate, hits the guardrail. And as it hit the guardrail, my head went outside the window, but the frame of the car caught my shoulder, snapped all the nerves from the brainstem on that side. My body torpedoed out of the car, hit the guardrail, and the car bounced over me. It's truly a miracle I am alive to share with you the story. So, as a result of the car accident, I paralyzed a fourth of my body, shattered my shoulder, broke my collarbone, had lots of big wounds from going through the window, punctured my spleen and my liver, and broke all the bones in the upper part of my face. There was a lot to clean up. I was in the ICU for a month, back-to-back surgeries, skin grafts, had a 13-hour nerve transplant. It was a lot. Adapting to do life with one arm, to do life with my right hand, or without my right hand, actually. I was right-handed before, so definitely not ambidextrous, and it was a lot to overcome. I was also in extreme nerve pain, something that I had never experienced before. At times, I would have to be hospitalized because the nerve pain would be so intense, my body would just go into convulsions, and we have to go to the hospital to be sedated. And with all of the changes, the biggest change that surprised me the most was how differently I was treated. I went from being an able-bodied kid to a kid with a disability overnight, and I felt like I lost my friend group instantly. So as we remember, this is 7th grade. We're all a little insecure and awkward, and there's a new kid that comes to school. And in that place of insecurity, she lashes out by bullying, and I became her target. I was an easy target. I was vulnerable. I was weak. I was in pain. I was insecure. So she starts daily bullying me and saying horrific things. One day it would be like, Kelly, your scars are so gross. They make me want to throw up. Or the next day it would be like, Kelly, I talked to everyone in class and they all agree your arm and your hand look so weird. You should just wear gloves and long sleeves so we don't have to see it. It was brutal. I became so ashamed of my body. I became so embarrassed and felt so much guilt for the way that my body made other people feel. She would print pictures of zombies and come up to me and say, like, look, Kelly, it looks just like you. And then she started to shift her focus towards academics, basically anything I could be proud of. I would get a good grade or do well on a project. And she would approach me and say, Kelly, do you actually think you deserve that? Do you actually think you earned your grades or got that award because you deserved it? The staff here, the teachers, everyone just feels sorry for you. So anything that you've accomplished, it's all out of pity. And to be frank, I don't feel sorry for you. And I just want you to know that you don't deserve any of this. So she basically just started attacking all the areas of my life. And the most heartbreaking part was it wasn't just her. It wasn't just this new girl that I didn't know. I was looking across at friends that I'd had since first grade, friends that I had done all of elementary and junior high so far with. And she was scary and mean. So they decided that they would rather be on that side of the fence than mine. So as I'm hearing the laughter and the sneers, it was my friends of my whole childhood looking back at me. I felt so alone. They then started to hyper focus on me like a game. They began stealing my things and stuffing them into sewers. They began framing me to see if they could see if I could get a detention or I could get a demerit or something. It became this hyper focus where every single day it was the game of what can we do to Kelly? I would even go to sit down at the cafeteria and they would spread out all their things to say, you're not welcome here. I became a shell of a person. It is incredible how quickly your identity can unravel when you lose your community. I tried to disappear. I tried to become invisible. This talkative kid learned to go through an entire school day without saying a word. I felt like I wasn't accepted. I wasn't wanted. I definitely wasn't befriended. And I quickly learned I no longer belonged in a community I used to love so much. I was so incredibly lonely. And I was in so much physical pain, but the emotional pain was actually a heavier burden to carry. And it was at this time that two friends, no, I shouldn't say friends, two students, I think we were all about 13, told me, Kelly, if my life looked like yours, I would end it. And to be honest, I thought about it. We all need belonging. We are built to belong. We are actually created by God to connect with one another. There are 10 different dimensions of belonging: to be present, invited, welcomed, to be known, accepted, involved, supported, heard, befriended, and needed. And when there is a lack of belonging, it leads to loneliness, because belonging and connection is actually the antidote to loneliness. Brene Brown says, in the absence of love and belonging, there is always suffering. Loneliness is something, honestly, we can all relate to. Regardless of our backgrounds, ethnicities, our life experiences, we can all relate to a moment, a season, or maybe even our current state where we feel lonely. I recently got involved with an organization called Only 7 Seconds. It's an organization that combats loneliness in youth and encourages kids in their self-worth. And as I've been getting more involved, I've actually learned that this problem around loneliness is so much worse than I realized. Let's look at some of the stats. Nearly 50% of youth in Washington are experiencing clinically diagnosed anxiety, yet most are not being treated or supported in any way. This is insane. Nearly 8 in 10, 79% of the Gen Z generation are saying and reporting that they are lonely, making them the loneliest generation. And it's not just kids. 3 out of 5, 61% of American adults who were surveyed stated that they are lonely. And sadly, last year was the highest number of youth suicides in the history of the United States. Nearly 50,000 youth took their own life. It's really, really heavy. Our world is drowning in loneliness. We are in a loneliness epidemic. And when we lack human connection, our physical, mental, social, and emotional health, they all suffer. Loneliness can increase your chance and risk of heart disease, arthritis, type 2 diabetes, dementia, and suicide attempts, according to the New York Times. We live in a world that values individualism over community, competition over collaboration. We are bombarded with messages that we need to be independent, self-sufficient, and strong at all times. But the truth is, we can't thrive in isolation. We are in a fast-paced world that is more connected and disconnected than it has ever been. But the thing is, there is hope. What a difference one person can make. My story took a huge turn when I went to go visit my cousin Lexi. I was bullied for 2 years nonstop. And at the end of 8th grade, I went to visit her. And during that time, she spoke so much light and love into my heart. She made me feel valued and seen. She encouraged me in my self-worth. She told me that I was needed in this world and that I would be deeply missed if I was gone. The impact that she had in her words in such a dark season changed my life because I actually started to believe that her words were true. And it started my healing journey because the healing needed to start with believing that the lies I had heard about myself were not true and that my life actually mattered. Because the first step in belonging is actually self-acceptance. I started to believe it. So when I went back to school, the bullying continued, but it no longer had the same impact because I actually believed that I deserved better. I thought I actually deserved better friends. I deserved to be treated better. So eventually they got bored because it wasn't having the impact they were hoping it would. And so they stopped. If you yourself are feeling lonely, I just want to encourage you, do not lose hope. You are loved and your life matters. There are 86,000 400 seconds, 400 seconds, 86,000. That is so many seconds in one day. And it only takes 7 seconds to send a text. It only takes 7 seconds to make an intentional connection. Something that seems so small could make such an incredible impact. We need to remember the power of our words. We need to strive to be the Lexi in someone else's life. We all have someone, whether it be your own child, your friend, your neighbor, the cashier at the grocery store that you go to every week, or maybe it's someone in this room. We all have someone that we know needs encouragement. So I want you to actually take a few seconds right now and think of someone by name. Who could you encourage this week? Even better, could you write it down? Because I'm actually asking you to commit to encouraging that person this week. Today, send them a text. Send them a message just saying that you value them as a friend, that they mean something to you. Why don't you send them a gift card? Let them know that you're thinking of them. Because I want to empower you to remember the impact that you could have by encouraging someone in their self-worth, because you might actually be the person that saves their life. Thank you.